In 1865, in a Finnish town most Europeans could not find on a map, a composer was born who would never chase Vienna and never court Paris. Jean Sibelius retreated to a timber villa beside a frozen lake, and from that silence he built music so radical that critics could not even describe what they were hearing. So, just how good was he actually? The answer starts not with sound, but with its absence. The town sits in the shadow of a fortress, ringed by forests and ice. Here, Jean Sibelius is born into a world where the Finnish language itself is an act of rebellion. At home, Swedish is spoken. In the streets, Russian officials enforce their empire's presence. But in the new Finnish normal school, Sibelius hears his mother tongue in poetry and song for the first time. The sound is unfamiliar, rough-edged, but it plants something deep, a sense of belonging that will haunt his music for decades. As a young man, Sibelius walks the lakeshore alone, listening to the wind move through birch and pine. His diaries fill with fragments, the hush before birdsong, the echo of footsteps in snow. He writes to his friend, conductor Robert Kajanis, describing the silence around him as the true beginning of music. Kajanis, already a champion of Finnish composers, recognizes the raw power in Sibelius's solitude. He invites the young composer to the Helsinki Conservatory in the 1880s, where lessons take place in cramped rooms, far from the grand halls of Vienna or Paris. Yet even in the city, Sibelius avoids the crowd, slipping away to sketch ideas at the edge of the woods. When he marries Aino and builds Ainola, a modest timber villa north of Helsinki, he chooses a place where the only neighbours are trees and the lake's slow breath. Here, music grows not from noise, but from absence. The isolation is both burden and gift. Cut off from the feverish debates of Europe's capitals, Sibelius finds his own path. In the silence, every pause becomes a possibility, every quiet moment a seed for something vast. The Finnish landscape and the spaces between its sounds shape him as much as any teacher or score. Music for Sibelius did not begin with grand themes or heroic gestures. It started with a cell, a handful of notes, sometimes just 2 or 3, circling each other quietly. This cell is more than a motif. It is a seed planted deep in the soil of silence, left to grow at its own pace. Sibelius called this process organic growth. Instead of building with blocks, he let his music sprout, branch and twist, as if following the logic of a living thing. In his scores, a single cell can unfold across entire movements. The opening of Symphony No. 5 offers one example. 3 notes in the clarinet, barely more than a whisper, repeated and reshaped until they become the famous swan theme. The transformation is slow, almost imperceptible. Yet, by the time the full orchestra releases its power, the listener has followed the cell's journey from root to canopy. Pedal tones, long-held notes in the bass, anchor these landscapes. They act as the bedrock beneath shifting harmonies, echoing the Finnish earth under snow and pine. Above them, fragments drift and recombine, never quite settling, always searching. The result is a sense of inevitability, as if the music is discovering itself in real time. This way of composing stands apart from the classical tradition, where form is mapped out in advance. Sibelius's structures feel alive, their outlines blurred by mist and shadow. The ear learns to listen for growth, not just arrival. It is architecture made of breath and weather, where each pause is as meaningful as each note. In Sibelius, structure is not a cage but a forest, open, uncertain, and endlessly unfolding. In Sibelius, instruments rarely just play, they inhabit a world. The clarinet becomes a lake's edge at dusk, the double basses a slab of granite buried beneath moss and snow. His orchestra is not a machine, but a living landscape, mapped out in sound. Listen closely, and the strings turn to wind. High flutes shimmer like sunlight on ice, horns rise and fall like migrating swans. Even silence has texture here. A hush between phrases is the stillness of a clearing, the breath before a storm. Sibelius's scores are full of these hidden cartographies. He writes a single pedal note, low and unyielding, and suddenly the ground feels solid underfoot. A flutter of woodwinds sketches the flight of birds, and a muted brass chord hangs in the air like mist. Each instrument is cast as an element: earth, water, air, stone. The effect is not just descriptive, it is immersive, collapsing the border between music and place. Sound becomes weather, harmony becomes terrain. The orchestra breathes with the rhythm of the forest, the pulse of thaw and freeze. This mapping of nature onto music was no accident. It was a deliberate act, shaped by the same forces that inspired the painter Galen Kallela to see myth in the lines of a pine or the shadow of a boulder. In Sibelius, every timbre is a metaphor, every texture a kind of geography. The result is a music that feels not just heard, but inhabited, a sonic landscape where listeners lose themselves in the wild, shifting light of the north. 3 works, 3 worlds built from almost nothing. In Symphony No. 2, premiered in Helsinki in April 1902, Sibelius begins not with a grand statement, but with a whisper. The opening is a single sustained note, bare, suspended in air, before a fragment of melody rises as if gathering itself from silence. The music does not reveal its full shape at once. Instead, it grows, twisting and branching, until the final movement erupts in a surge of brass and strings. What began as a fragile cell becomes a force that fills the hall, leaving audiences stunned by the transformation. Symphony No. 5 offers another path. The so-called swan theme, first heard in the clarinet in measures 31 to 33, is just 3 notes: E, F sharp, G, barely more than a call across water. Sibelius lets it drift, echo and dissolve, only to return later, bolder and brighter, in the horns. By the finale, those same notes have become a procession, arching high above the orchestra. The journey from cell to anthem is almost invisible, but the emotional impact is unmistakable. Finlandia, written for the 1899 press celebration and revised in 1900, moves from darkness to blazing light. The opening chords churn like a storm, but out of the turmoil comes a hymn, simple, unadorned, unmistakably Finnish. The melody is sung quietly at first, then rises, gathering strength until it stands as a kind of answer to every shadow. In each of these works, Sibelius does not merely develop a theme, he transforms it, shaping sound into something vast and alive. Early reviews read like dispatches from a foreign land. Critics in Berlin and Leipzig struggled to find their bearings, searching for familiar landmarks in music that refused to follow the map. The Berliner Tageblatt called Kullervo an unfinished experiment, uneasy with its abrupt shifts and lingering silences. In Helsinki, Heikki Klemetti wrote that Symphony No. 2 felt enigmatic, almost cryptic, as if Sibelius had abandoned the safe roads of tradition for a path lost in fog. Even admirers hesitated. Arturo Toscanini, a conductor known for his precision, complained that the symphonies defy conventional rehearsal methods because their inner logic is concealed behind a veil of mist. Some accuse Sibelius of sacrificing structure for mood, of letting atmosphere swallow form. Others dismissed Finlandia as too programmatic, too bound to the soil of its homeland to speak a universal language. The press, facing music that grew like a forest, slow, tangled, and unpredictable, often responded with frustration or caution. In these early years, Sibelius's sound world felt more like a riddle than a revelation. A hush falls across the orchestra, a silence so complete it feels like a living presence. In Sibelius, this is not emptiness, but a space charged with tension. The pause before a single horn note, the breath between string phrases, the way a melody seems to hover in the air before dissolving. These moments would become the DNA of modern film music, where silence is not absence, but anticipation. Decades after Sibelius, composers for cinema and games would borrow this technique, using measured quiet to draw the listener deeper into the story. The game music toolbox calls this the pivot of silence, a device that turns a scene with a simple drop in volume, sometimes as much as 23 decibels, into a moment of suspense or awe. In Sibelius's Fifth Symphony, that dynamic range is not just a technical feat, it is a tool for shaping emotion, for letting the music breathe and expand. Today, when a film score swells from near silence to thunder, or a game soundtrack pulls the player into a world with a sudden hush, the fingerprints of Sibelius remain. His sound world, forged in the forests of Finland, echoes in every cinematic pause, every charged silence that tells us something is about to happen. In today's world of noise and speed, Sibelius's music lingers, a living landscape where silence breathes and sound transforms. As orchestras and filmmakers rediscover his voice, the question shifts, not how good but how necessary. Some music vanishes. Sibelius endures like forest, wind, and the dark before dawn.